recording. Almost forgot about that. So let me share my screen. Okay, so first topic up the bat we are going to talk about is communication tools. So most of you are familiar with the announcements, but there might be a couple things that you are not familiar with. So this is going to be the first topic. So announcements, everybody gets a default button, announcements, within their course shells. The one thing that you should know about is if you have something that is very important in a course that you want to keep up in front of people, you have this line here that says new announcements appear below this line. So if you have something that's very, very important and you want to keep it pinned at the top, you can simply move it. You see the 4-point arrow pop up just like the course menu over here. You can drag and drop something up or below that new announcements line. So for example, if I wanted to keep this message in front of people for a few weeks, I can bring it up and drop it above that new announcements appear here, and this will keep pinned until I decide to move it down below. The new announcements will start populating below here in order. So, all right. To create an announcement, it's very simple. Click on Create Announcement, fill in the subject line, put your message in there. The one thing that I do want to make uh, put an emphasis on is this email announcement. I strongly suggest you do this every time you put out an announcement because not only is it going to hit them in Blackboard, it's going to hit them in their Gmail, their MATC Gmail account as well. Now, obviously, when you first start a semester, you got to tell these kids to check their Gmail, which that can be hit and miss. But at least using this method, you have the possibility of hitting them in 2 different places. So I always put this option on. You can date restrict it and put it out at certain times, opening and closing. It's up to you. Most times I'm just putting things out there. And the one thing to remember about this course link, um, if they are seeing it in their email, they're not going to be able to click on that link. They need to be in Blackboard to use to be able to click on that link. So I typically don't put a course link in there. You have this giant text editor. You can put all kinds of different things in there. Remember the plus button that's within the text editor. You can put files, you can put videos, all kinds of different things that are in there. And even here's something interesting that you might want to try next semester. You can put a welcome video of yourself in your class and send it out as an announcement. You can play around with Yuja and create a short little video. I'm on the front end of learning about Yuja myself, and I might try that eventually and putting out a video announcement, probably in the Blackboard classes, not my face-to-face because I see them every time. So, but if you're online or hybrid or something like that, you may want to put something out like that. But Yuja so far that I've looked at seems relatively straightforward and not terrible to use. So, but I still got a little bit of a learning curve to it as well. Otherwise, it's a simple submit and out it goes. And you see the announcement is posted here, and it will also go to the email. That's my test course. I don't know if it would come to me or not, but if it was in a regular course, it would come into your email as well, a carbon copy of it. There we go. So there's the carbon copy of it. So, all right. And Eldora, I'll look at your email on a break.
Thank you.
So, yep. One other thing that I'd like to say about announcements is every once in a while we'll get an email that we want to do in a bunch of classes, the same email. So I'm going to open up another Blackboard tab here. So when you land on Blackboard, remember those tools that we saw where the Quickly Course tools were? If I go back there, so tools, Quickly Course tools, this is a software program that's attached to Blackboard that we pay extra for. But one of the nice things that's out here is post an announcement. And what's nice about this is I can literally come in here and select a bunch of courses that I want to send out to. So this is kind of odd. Oh, this is very odd. I'm not seeing any of my own courses. I think what's going on here is they only show you courses that are active. And because I don't have my fall classes published yet, I believe they come out in July, they get pushed out to us, that I don't see any of those classes. I think they've made changes since I've last taught this to really calm this down because before this used to be a mile long. The search parameters were just horrible, but it looks like there's my summer class. I'm dropped into Bruce's class. That's why I'm seeing his. But it only seems to be active ones that are currently being taught. So if we were in a normal semester, I could come in and say these were all my classes that I were teaching for that semester. I could do my announcement right here. Maybe it was a bad weather situation where classes are canceled. Instead of going into each one, you could just come here, click all your courses, type your email out or your announcement out. And what's nice is this feature right here. You can send an email as well. You can also drop in stuff from online places such as Google Docs or Box or OneDrive from Microsoft Office, things like that, and drop in. You can also cut and paste and drop stuff in here. You don't have the giant text editor, but you do have some things to do. You can do a hot hyperlink, but not a heck of a lot. But if it's just a quick message you need to get out to all your classes at the same time, remember Quickly Course tools and announcements. It's kind of handy. So I'll give you an example. Last semester, I had a scholarship opportunity for my HVAC students. Instead of going into each class and doing it, I just came here, created the one message, and pushed it out to all my classes. So it's very handy. And then obviously, once you fill in everything, just hit submit. Okay, so that's the announcements tool. Pretty simple and straightforward. Anybody have any questions about it? Okay, email tool. Pretty straightforward as well. Let me ask you all a question. Where can you email your students from besides your Gmail account? Everything that is attached to Blackboard related to email all has to do with the MATC Gmail account. So besides being in your email, in your Gmail, where can you send an email from in Blackboard? Go ahead, whoever raised their hand.
From the roster, you can select the email all from like your attendance section, I think.
From where?
From the roster and the class roster, there's a email all select.
Where's the class roster? There's no class roster
in the attendance section. Would that be on self-serve though, wouldn't it?
That's self-service, I think you're thinking of.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Could you use the users and groups?
You could use, let me just, it's been a while. So users and groups, users. No. Let me try groups. No. Been a while since I tried that.
On users, you just would click on their hyperlink. If you go back, like you could just click on the hyperlink of their email.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, there you go. Learn something new every day. So, yep. However, if you're set up with this, look what it opened up into. You'd have to pull off and pull Google. So it looked like it defaulted to Outlook. I don't run Outlook myself, so, but yes, that is another way. Anybody else? No one? You ever go ahead? You ever sit in the grading and you come across somebody that is maybe hasn't done something? Okay, Donnie, you didn't do the chapter 1 reflection. Ooh, I notice you're missing a whole bunch of things. Well, I really need to talk to him. So all I have to do before I say this, today one of the big criteria is grade center functions. But what you're going to see through our whole talk today is we're going to visit the grade center here and there instead of just one session because it's going to fit in different places. And this is the first example of it. So if I'm in the grade center, first of all, how do I get in the grade center? It's over here in the course management, the control panel. You have the grade center. If I was to click on grade center, you'd want full grade center. But an easier way to do that is the little arrow that's right next to grade center. You just click that, you just jump right into the full grade center. So back to Donnie here. He hasn't done a lot of stuff. I'm starting to get concerned. So I'm going to click the down arrow next to his name, and I'm going to go right to emailing him. That way I'm in the same area. I can just send him a quick message saying, hey, get your stuff done. It's getting close to the hour, and boom, you're done. And then you're back in the grade center and you can keep grading and doing what else you were doing. So it's a pretty handy feature. Okay. Under course tools, there is the email tool. Where's it? Send email. And then I can select different single users, or I can send an email to all the users. You got all the normal options that are here. Okay. So another place that you can do it is Quickly Course Tools. Back where we had the post announcement, you can also send an email. So I can also select all those courses and send a single email out. This one, we can attach a file here. The only difference between this and the post announcements is you don't send anything to Blackboard through the email. Only the post announcements does. And post announcements I prefer because not only am I going to hit them in email, I'm going to hit them in Blackboard as well. So it's rare that I send an email when I want to tell everybody in the class something. I'll switch to announcements, which will also allow me to send an email as well. But not much to email. Everybody's pretty familiar with it, so we're going to leave that one be unless anybody has any questions. But please become familiar with the Grade Center option. It is handy when you're sitting there grading students and you quick want to say something to them, even if it's words of encouragement. Hey, Josh or Amy, I noticed that you're really turned things around, and thank you for all the extra work and coming up in class. You know, it doesn't have to always be negative. It can be positive as well. So, all right. Discussion board, another communication tool. So before we talk about discussion board, there are 3 terms in there that we need to be familiar with. There is the forum, the thread, and the reply. This is a hierarchical relationship. Can anybody in here tell me what a forum is? Oops. Anybody in here tell me what a forum is? Yes, go ahead.
Like a place where everyone can discuss a topic?
Absolutely. So think about a forum as your lead topic. Typically, it's the instructor putting things out. I have seen some interesting designs where the teacher will ask or survey a class for topics for forums. There's different ways you can do things, but typically it's the teacher that's putting out a question, a topic, a area of discussion. It could be a video that is controversial. It could have multiple viewpoints or interpretations. But that's your lead topic for discussion. The whole point of this is to elicit discussion from your students. What about a thread? Who can tell me what a thread is?
That's the user's individual comment or response to the question posed in the forum.
Absolutely. So you have the forum as the great big area. The threads are the people that are coming in, either students or teachers, creating threads as a response to the forum. And then finally, the replies are, what are the replies? Go ahead.
Replying to an individual's comment?
Yeah, so replies are responses to the threads themselves. So, all right. So, what can we use a discussion board for? Well, thinking about a discussion board, the main goal of this is to replicate the conversations that are happening in the classroom. Discussion boards can be used a whole bunch of different ways, and even if you're in a face-to-face class, even if you're in a lab class, there are still ways to utilize it to your advantage. I once had an electrical instructor that swore up and down that he would never use this tool because he had one particular class where he had a lot of math in it. So I gave him an example of a discussion board that I used in one of my electrical classes that the students had to calculate different values within a circuit, electrical values. And what I did with it is created a diagram of an electrical circuit and asked for the students to solve those values. And immediately he jumped on me. He's like, well, once the first person puts it up there, then everybody's going to just put the same thing. But there is an option in Blackboard and discussion boards that the kids have to post first before they get to see anything. So I used this right before a quiz. I made it homework and I used it before a quiz. So I forced them to practice for the exam. So he liked that idea. Hopefully he jumped on it and is using it. It's a one way to show substantive interaction between you and the students, which is now a hot topic at MATC and something that we are going to be looking for in course reviews and things like that. We also have some lovely sum total coming in the near future on substantive interaction. So this is one way that you can do this. I've also seen where instructors don't participate in discussion boards. They just let the discussion boards run between the students. I don't know whether that's right or wrong. I myself don't like that. I like being involved in discussion boards, and you'll see that once we participate in the research topic. I'm going to chime in on everybody. There's always something to add, even if it's me recognizing that you taught me something, like the email thing this morning. There's always learning. There's always possibilities, not only for just improvements, but for different ways you might use a tool. Somebody might say something about a wiki and how they might use it, not realizing that you could use it probably a dozen different other ways. So I think there's value in instructors chiming in. You don't necessarily have to jump on every post that's out there, but putting your opinion and adding to the learning experience does add value. And also at the same time, you're giving your students valuable feedback as well. So to start off, one thing to know, discussion board is a tool, not a content area. So if you accidentally deleted the discussion board button, you'd have to, I've seen where people come to the plus button, they click on content area, label it discussion board, and then they're lost because that's not a tool. It's just a content area. So you got to go to tool link. Call it what it is. Select the proper one, which is discussion board. Make it available to users. Again, you get this stuff default in your courses, so you shouldn't have to do this unless you accidentally deleted it. Put that up there. Once you go in there, first step is to create a forum, which is right here. We'll do a simple loose, introduce yourself. This is what I used to do when my classes started. I kind of like the slides better, but this is another way to do introductions in a class. I'm going to say, please introduce and respond to two other people. There's a reason I'm doing this right now. I'll show you a little bit. Oftentimes we ask them to do something and then respond to one or two or three or whatever many people. I'll get to how we can make that a little advantageous to us once it comes to grading. Down here, it defaults to available yes. If you're building things out and you're not ready for it, then you can simply switch it to no. You could put date and time restrictions on it, opening and closing. Forum settings. This was the set of options that I alluded to earlier. A standard view, everything opens and everything is visible to all the students at any point. So if I post something and then Kim comes behind me, she'll see what I put up before she puts hers up. Now, if I run into a topic where I suspect I'm going to get a lot of the same answers, like that math question that I posed earlier, once somebody gets all the solutions right, the cat's out of the bag. So I actually selected participants must create a thread in order to view other threads. So this is a post first type forum. So that means they have to post first before they get to see the rest of this stuff. So this is an awesome tool to enforce originality. Even if it's just regular topics and you start noticing after a couple of weeks that the kids are just jumping on the bandwagon and copying the first two smart kids in the class. And if you're getting tired of that, then you can come in midstream and not in one that's posted already, but one that's coming up, switch it to a post first and see if that changes things for you. It's going to enforce originality. We are going to grade this one, so I'm going to switch it to grading. I'm going to switch it to 10 points. I just typed it in. These pop-up boxes that show, they're just telling you that Blackboard did something. Because you switched it to a graded forum, it took some options away that don't relate to it. So it changed some things for you. Now notice earlier I said, introduce yourself and respond to two other people. So there's 1, 2, 3 total entries. So to make my life easier when I am grading, I'm going to switch needs grading status to after 3 posts. So now when something's ready to be graded, you'll see this symbol, an exclamation point in the circle, that it's ready to be graded. If I set that to 3, I'm not going to see this until that person has done their job and did all 3. So it's kind of nice when you're in there with a bunch of students in your class and you're trying to grade, you know what only you need to look at, so you're not looking at things that aren't ready to go yet. So if you want to put a due date, simply click on the calendar, put a due date on there. The associated rubrics. This class really doesn't touch on rubrics. That's intermediate, but we're going to have to touch on it when we get to career essentials, which I will tie that to a dynamic assignment, which will be up to bat in a couple topics. So I typically leave all this stuff default. We do get into it a little deeper when it comes to intermediate Blackboard, but if you're the novice or introductory user, you can just leave all this default. It's not going to hurt a darn thing. So, all right. Otherwise, we go ahead and submit, and we have our form. So what does it look like as a student? Let me ask Megan, if I want to go look at what this looks like as a student, how do I do that?
You go to the little button on the upper right that has like the little lock. Yep, right
The
there.
lock?
No, the one right next to it. Yep,
The eye in the sky?
eye in the sky.
There you go. All right. So now we're in student preview mode. So now I'm a student. I don't have access to anything a teacher would. This is exactly what your students will see. I'll click on that. Look at this. It gives them a warning. This is a post first discussion forum. So they're only going to see things once they create. And it'll tell them how many people have posted. It might say 10 people, and they know, oh, I better get my button gear. So they have to click on create thread, put their stuff in. In and submit. And if I was somebody else coming along, I could take a look at this person by clicking on it and reply to them. And this is something you're going to have to do in one of your assignments, to reply to them. And boom, submit it. And there we go. Now in your assignment, you're going to have to do this, but then exit and save it, because I'm going to ask you to grade it. So you're back in as a teacher, and if I want to grade a discussion board, I have to go to the grade center. And again, the little shortcut is just to use the arrow, drops me right in. Because I just created this, it's going to throw it all the way down at the end of the grade center. A little later, I'm going to show you how to rearrange the grade center. But notice the symbol. If you ever want to know what all these little symbols are, you have an icon legend right here. So the attempt is in progress. Why is it in progress? Well, how many posts did we do? How many entries did we do? We posted and I replied. But the stipulations of the assignment were 3. Post once and reply twice. So that's why you see that it's in progress and not ready. If I had done all 3, I would have seen an exclamation point here, and I'd have known it's ready to grade. But just to show how to grade it, we're going to go ahead. I'm going to click the down arrow next to that person's attempt, and I'm going to select grade user activity. Now it doesn't always, depending on what we're trying to grade, it doesn't always show something this obvious, grade user activity. It may say something like the attempt, which we'll see when we look at the dynamic assignment. But for now, we're going to click on grade user activity. And we get to see everything that that person's done up there in relationship to the topic. One thing to keep in mind, though, if this was a reply to another person and then another person and so forth, it takes things out of context. So if something is a little odd, then you may have to go look at it out in the discussion board. But this is very useful because if I see something that I want to say to the whole class and make it visible, I can actually reply here and it will post out on the discussion board for everybody to see. Now, if I want to give feedback to the learner privately, then I come over here in the right side where it says feedback to learner. And you can type in whatever you want to do. Then you simply enter the score. Put whatever score in you want. I'll show you kind of a cool thing. Let me just see if it's in here. No, it's somewhere else. I'm going to show you one thing that I learned where you can actually create. Oh, actually, no, it's here. All right, so here it is. So if you're ever in here and you're grading a student and you wind up with something that's holy crap, I need to just talk to this person instead of typing another whole paper back to them. This is a really cool feature. So if I come to here, this little A with the line through it, this brings up the giant text editor. And if I come to this little plus button in here, it gives me a new option. I can insert from a webcam. Now it can go so far as you just talking, or you can add a video as well. So I learned about this a few years ago, and every once in a while I'll get something that is so involved that it would just be easier to talk to the person or maybe even show something. This is a really cool tool that you can play around with and learn and send your students back video messages or just audio messages. It's really cool. So remember that one. But that's where that one is. Not really a in the COS for this class, but I just think that feature is pretty cool. So I always like to share that one. But otherwise, straightforward feedback, just type it in. If you want the class to see it, put it out as a reply. Otherwise, go ahead and submit. What do the students see? If we go back into the student preview mode and we look at my grades, seeing as I'm a student, I can see my grading. And here it is, the introduce yourself. I can either go to the forum by clicking on here, or if I just want to see the instructor's comment, I click on the little call out and I see what they said to me. Okay. Any questions on the discussion board? That one's a pretty popular tool that a lot of people will use in their class. One thing to keep in mind with most discussion boards is you want to use topics that are controversial or have differing viewpoints. But what's cool about this is it doesn't just have to be words. When you go in and create a forum, don't forget you've got ways to insert pictures, ways to insert a YouTube mashup or a YouTube video that you created. You know, I could get in front of one of my furnaces with my cell phone and take a little video of me pointing to different components or demonstrating something where I broke something in the middle of a sequence and ask them to tell me, you know, some possible scenarios or some possible test procedures to do. I could drop that video in here and that could be my forum. I love using criminal justice as an example, or EMS. Y'all run into so many different scenarios that have unbelievable amount of different ways that you could go with something. Posting a video and stopping it at a certain point, because when you upload a video to Yuja, you can edit it and you can chop it. So, you know, I talked about this with the truck drivers. It's like there's so many videos out on the internet. Get one where something's about to happen and stop it, and then put that up there as a discussion board. What would you do, meaning the student, do if you were in this place and okay, I could go left, I could go right, I could apply the brakes, whatever the case may be. So discussion boards don't always have to just be boring 1, 2, 3 sentence leaders or forums. They can get really interesting depending on how creative you get with it. So play around with that in your own time and maybe get one that's you seems pretty cool and test it out in one of your classes and see what the students think about it and move forward from there. But don't limit yourself with these discussion boards. They can get kind of interesting. I've got an electrical code class that is just, I won't sugarcoat it. It's boring as hell, electrical code. If you ever have problems sleeping, just let me know. I will let you borrow one of the code books. It will put you to sleep real fast. So I use pictures a lot in that class to where I show different installations that are out there and I ask them, okay, what are some possible code violations that are in here? And they get to look at a real life example and pick it apart. So at least it's a lot better than sitting there reading a tiring sentence or two. So, all right. Questions, concerns, donations? Nothing? I'll take gas money these days, that's for sure. Okay, so no questions on the discussion board. All right, Collaborate. Who in here can tell me about the Collaborate tool? What is it? Blackboard Collaborate.
It's a place to meet with your students, to do instruction or conversations.
It's what we're using right now, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. We'll let you in on a little secret. And I don't know which way this one's going to go. But recently, probably within the last week and a half, I was informed that Blackboard had sold Collaborate. I don't know what that means for us going forward with this particular tool. Whether they're going to get rid of it, whether they're going to change to something else, I don't know. But in the meantime, they're going to have to stick with it for at least for some point because they can't leave an entire system without a tool like that because people would simply abandon ship of Blackboard if they did that in today's environment. However, I don't know if it's going to change. We're taking a hard look at UJA right now to see what tools they have outside of what we see right now as screen capture and things like that. Apparently they do have a conferencing tool, but at this point I know as much as you do, but I'm kind of getting tired of some of the software changes myself, but keep your ear posted for any changes. But in the meantime, I would at least learn the basics of Blackboard Collaborate to be able to do any meetings. And I don't care if you're face to face or not. In a pinch, if you get shut down, you're not going to have much of a choice but to switch to a virtual environment as we've seen in the past 2 years. But here are some of the basics about Blackboard Collaborate. So it is a tool. So if it is not in your menu, you'd use the plus button, tool link. I don't like calling it Blackboard Collaborate because that's not intuitive to somebody that doesn't know what it is. So I'll call it something else. Something that students might understand what it is. But for the tool selection, you have to do Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. Make it available to students, and there it is. So in Collaborate Ultra, let me just get rid of this. When you first come into it and you've done nothing, you're going to have a course room and the ability to create sessions. Now, if you're a very novice user and you're just starting out, it may be in your best interest just to use the course room because it's always open and you don't have to do any settings to it. It already has everything you need in there. It has guest access. So if somebody is having a problem and are not joined up with their class, like we had 2 instructors that had issues with the enrollment. So what I did was I came into our live course, I clicked on it, copied it, and dropped that in an email to our 2 fellow teachers in here, and they joined our first session this way until they could get enrolled in the class. So if you have a student that's having issues, can't find the course, something's wrong, you can at least get them in through a guest link. It is better to have them come into it through Blackboard by logging in and coming to the course menu, because it's going to populate the attendance reports, and then you can track how much time they were in there, if they're coming out, going in, coming out, having problems with their connection or whatever. But the difference between it and the guest link, a guest link, they can type whatever name they want. So if they type in John and you got 4 Johns in the class, that may not help you much. And 2 of them came in through a guest link. So it's best to have them come in through here. But some of the other options that you have in a course room, you can lock the course room. I did that with us, so I didn't have people going in the wrong room. They were forced into our live session. But I'm going to create a session. You're going to see all the same options you would in a test, in a course room, as you would in a session. So let me just show you that. So I click on create session. Live session, we'll just pick that one. I will give myself the ability to have guest access. You'll see that the guest link will show up after you've created it. If you wanted to delineate a start and an end date, you could do so, simply clicking on when you want it. Otherwise, if you just want to use it as a repeating room for the rest of the semester, you could do no end, and it will go that way. If you created a start and a stop and you wanted to repeat it once a week, you do it. You can make this very custom, but let me clue you in on something. If this is a course that you teach once a week, using the course room or a single session that you created, and it's always open, who cares? It's not like the students are going to go in there and start graffitiing the walls. It's just a digital room that they can't do anything really while you're not in there. So in my mind, either using the course room or a single session, I used the single session method just so I could spell out the name clearly for my live classes, because it had the date and said live session. So it's very clear where people need to go. But I could just leave it open. It's not a big deal. I haven't had to teach any of my face-to-face classes synchronously online, just from the nature of what I teach. But that would probably what I would do is I'd put on a room that said Monday 8 to 3 or 8 to 12 session, and just leave it a no end session. So each week they just come in, click the Monday, and drop into the room. And if there was 2 days that week, I have Monday and a Wednesday, just to clarify things for them. Really, end of the day, it's just a room. It really doesn't do anything. How many minutes do you want them to come in before start time? It defaults to 15 minutes. Give them at least that so they can come in and knock out any problems they might have. Otherwise, you can change it to other things. You also have the settings area. I typically allow recording downloads. So in case they are going to go up north for the weekend and they need to review a recording and they don't have Wi-Fi up there, they could download that recording to their laptop and take it with them. Because we all know our students are so dedicated that they will download the recordings, just like I know you all are. I know as soon as we're done with this session, y'all are probably sitting there watching these recordings over and over. Yeah, right. I leave everything else default. I typically take away the draw on the whiteboard and files so they're not playing around while I'm doing, but let them share their audio, let them share the video. Just let them know that this eats up more bandwidth. So if there are problems with their connections, to stop with the video, and then obviously let them chat. So also allow attendees to join the session using a telephone, because if that's all they have, at least they get something. It could be the audio backup for the session. And then I leave everything else default. There's a huge, huge frustration with Collaborate. So we have a federal law in the United States with ADA compliance that there has to be screen capture when you have a video for the deaf or hard of hearing people in the world. Blackboard completely misses this mark on this. And yet they find it important to have a profanity filter instead of getting live captions up. So I'm not going to sugarcoat my feelings on that. I wear hearing aids. I'm very hard of hearing, and I use captions all the time. So I typically use Collaborate as little as I possibly can, to be completely honest with you, just because of that role. Because I'll show you why. It's going to go infinity screen on me for a second, but I'm going to go over. And Len, you got your hand up for a particular reason, or? Len, can you type fast?
Fairly.
Fairly?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I hope you can type really fast, because you're now the live captioner. Isn't that nice? Isn't that a high-end feature of Blackboard Collaborate? So this literally is their answer to closed caption. I can pick somebody in this class and make them a closed captioner, which means they have to type as fast as I can speak, which is, in my opinion, asinine. But that's what their answer is. So that's
Yeah,
why.
I'm not that fast.
So what's the workaround for that? Because regardless of Blackboard's position, we as teachers are still on the hook for ADA compliance. So there's basically two options. You can either upload it to YouTube. You have your own YouTube channel because of MATC's Gmail account and Google account. And you can upload your Collaborate video to there, which it will caption it. It does a pretty decent job of the auto captioning. The downside is it takes time. Same thing with Yuja. I did my upload to there and allowed Yuja to caption me, but I'll be perfectly honest with you. I did not go back in and sit through 4 hours of watching the captions to make every little correction to the language that was in there. I just can't even wrap my head around spending that much time on this type of stuff, especially if you're doing live sessions multiple times a week. That would just be insane amounts of editing behind the scenes. So there really isn't a super good answer to this. Now, if it is a video that you've created and you're going to be using in your classes for a long time, and it was a structured performance, then that would be the type of content you'd spend some time on and make sure the captioning is correct. But right now, my two choices are YouTube and Yuja. I'm sure there's plenty other choices out there for auto captioning. even Google Meet did it behind the scenes, but they took the recording option away from us from Google Meet, so that's not an option anymore. So it was a shame because Google Meet did a pretty good job of auto captioning, but it is what it is. So please be aware that it doesn't caption for you. And then finally, because this isn't, let me take this off and I'll put this to, I'll move this time. Now, because I took the never ending, if I did want to take attendance, there is an attendance tool in Blackboard that you can connect this to the attendance tool, and you can enable it. I'm going to leave that for intermediate Blackboard to go over and cover. So, but for the basics, everything that you just saw, click on create. It's now a session. So it's open right now all the way to 3:43 p.m. For students to enter it, they click on it, they go in, join the session, and then they can see all the different tools that you all see. This is a brand new, something that literally popped up since the last time that I taught this class, and I already think it's pretty useless because when you're presenting your entire screen like I'm doing, I can't see you all in the background. So even though this is telling me that, ooh, there's 6 hands raised, that means nothing because I can't see this screen when I'm somewhere else. So I don't have a clue what they were trying to accomplish there, but whatever. Ooh, glad they told me to call participants by their name to get their attention. Ay, ay, ay. I'm going to go to the Infinity window just so I can show you some of the features, seeing as we have people in this class. So just ignore the Infinity room. When you share your entire screen, it will go to this. This isn't a big deal. Once you share your entire screen, just switch to a different window. But you can see how I can go to all these different things quickly instead of sharing, excuse me, specific tabs, which you could do. I just like the fact that I share my entire screen and I can start bouncing around to where I need to go. But some of the controls, yes, Lynn.
I guess I'm not really sure what the purpose of this infinity window is.
There really isn't one in my opinion.
It
It's
makes
just
me a
showing
little
you,
crazy.
what's it?
It makes me a little crazy looking at all that.
The reason I got it up here right now is I want to show you some controls with people in the class. If I would have stayed in that other one, there would have been nobody to show, to demonstrate with. That's kind of
I see.
the
Okay, thank
limitation.
you.
I'll be off of it in just a moment.
Okay, thank you. I just
Um,
didn't know if there was ever ever a time that we would need to use
no,
something like this. Okay,
no, no.
great.
That's why I said once you share your screen, move to another tab right away and then go about your business. So, but it's just Blackboard and their infinite wisdom. So, but I think I noticed that in Google Meet as well did it, but I'm not 100% sure. And each one's different. Teams, or I forget the other ones that are out there. Zoom. Everybody's got their own thing. So, all right. So you do have some abilities. So Len here still has her hand up. I can lower her hand. I have the ability as a moderator, it's called. If somebody's being naughty in the class, let's say Eldora's being naughty, I can simply remove her from the session, which I won't do. So if you have somebody that's just being downright nasty, rude, you got to get them out of there. You can remove them. However, they could still come back in. You'd have to simply remove them. If you really had to get rid of somebody, you could remove them and then go over to the users and then remove their access from the class. But that's a little bit more involved. I've never had an instance like that. If you really want to know about that, contact me on the side and I can show you about the users and groups, but that is more, actually that one's all the way up to advanced. That talks about users and groups, so advanced Blackboard. There are different roles within the class. You can be a presenter, which I could change, say Lisa to a presenter, change her status from a participant, which is the lowest status, which doesn't allow the students in the class to do a bunch of different things. But if I move Lisa up to a presenter, that means that she could share her screen and then present. Let's say it was some type of a report or presentation that each student had to do. You could make each student one at a time a presenter and bump them up. And then, let's see, I just made, actually I just made Eldora, sorry, I had her pulled down. Eldora is now a presenter, but once she was done presenting, I could just go back down and make her a participant again, and it moved her back down the list. You typically don't want to make somebody a moderator because then they have every ability that you have and they could literally shut down your stuff as well. So use the presenter or participant for the students. It defaults that everybody's a participant to start with. And then if you really needed to bump somebody up, you could. You can also see how good somebody's collection is, like Jennifer's connections, actually going pretty bad right now, going up and down. So if you have somebody that's saying, oh, my connection's really screwed up, you can literally tell if it's truthful or not. And then just all the other stuff that's in there. Or if, Megan, unmute yourself, please. One more.
There you go.
So let's say Megan was being really annoying and she's in the background with her mic on and she's brushing her teeth and doing all kinds of stuff and she's away from the microphone so she can't hear me saying to shut it off. I can just come in here and mute her. So it's very handy for when people are doing things, or I've had one. Thankfully, the video was off, but one went to the bathroom, so that's a quick mute. Get that person off. Or they're yelling at their kids in the background. Shut them down, get them off. Yeah, so I know other platforms will let like participants mute each other, and that's kind of fun to mess with your coworkers and stuff. But Blackboard doesn't. Only the moderators can mute people. So. And only the moderators can kick people out. I've never had to kick anybody out, so I hope I never have to. So, but, I've never had any of my sessions hacked either, so I heard that did happen to Zoom to the college at one time. But all right, so that is the very, very basics about Blackboard Collaborate. This does not go into groups. This does not go into polls or any of the other things that this tool can do. You would see that in intermediate and advanced Blackboard. Okay. Any questions about Collaborate? And it's very, very basic workings. I am going to show you how to present your screen, and then I am going to show you how to share the recordings with your students. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, so here is, I'm in my test course. I'm going to go into this live session. So this is just like if you were a teacher, you're coming into this session. You have your purple bar that expands and gets you all the different things that are going on here. You have a chat feature, the call out bubble. You can see how many participants are in here. You have the settings, which will give you all the settings that you might have seen. In the beginning, you can set up your camera, phone, and microphone if you're having issues. This may help you troubleshoot some things. Also, pay attention to icons that are up here. They may be blocked or disallowed. This is another area you might want to watch. but sharing your screen. So when I click on this rectangle with the right turn arrow in it, you could share a whiteboard, which is pretty straightforward. It's just a whiteboard that you can grab a pen and start writing on, but using a mouse, it's pretty crappy looking. You can use a stylus. Not much better, but you can clear the annotations. You can draw lines. You can have a hand moving around. You can have a pointer moving around. I don't know. It's kind of limited what you can do. You can download the different things you can do. You can have text box. If I had to use this for simple math demonstration, that might be helpful. I don't know. It's pretty limited. To stop sharing, little circle with the arrow, or you can do it here. It's here or here. It'll stop sharing. You can share your camera. This may be helpful. I've done this in the classroom when I've had some COVID isolated students. I have an eyeball camera that I set up in my classroom. And what I do is go into a Blackboard Collaborate session, have the student in there, and then I point the camera towards the whiteboard where I'm doing something, and then I'll share the camera, and then the student can see everything that I'm doing on the whiteboard. And then if I'm back to the PowerPoint, then I'll go over here to my share application and screen. So I'll share my entire screen. You have to click on the picture. The share button turns blue. If you were showing a video or something, if it had audio, you need to share system audio, and then you would hit share, and then everything would change. And if you did not get off that tab, you'd see the infinity window. So that's why after you hit the share button, just go right away to another tab, have it all set up, ready to go, and then move along. The other thing that you can do is share actual files, and you can preload these up before a session starts. So I can add a file. Here's a simple little PowerPoint. It's converting it right now. I do like how they do this. Once it gets up here, I'll show you. So it's going to line up your slides here. Because it's highlighted, I can now hit share now, and it shows me my slides over here on the right. Students don't see this. They only see something that you click on. So now they only see this slide. They don't see any of the peripherals. They don't see anything on the side. And then you get to see what's coming up next before you click on it. You can advance here, but I like to just say, oh, here's what's coming up next, and be ready for it as I'm sitting here talking and move through the slides. And what's nice about this, I'm going to stop presenting that. It's sitting here waiting for me, so I can upload 1, 2, 4, 5, whatever before that class session and have things set up. So there's another reason you might want to create a dedicated session and then preload anything, PowerPoints or whatever you want to put in there. You can even put documents in here if there's a rubric or whatever you want to upload, an article, and then you can click on those individual files and pull them up. So different ways that you can use this. But that is the way to share your screen, files, and different things like that. The rest of these don't get touched in this particular class. Okay, so I'm going to go to our class. Apologize for the infinity screen. Actually, I'm going to go to our class. I can work around this. I'm going to go to our online meetings. That's going to drop me into the Blackboard Collaborate tool. I'm coming here because I know I have some recordings in here. So trying to tell the student where the recordings are is not intuitive. So to do that, you'd have to come to the online sessions, the Blackboard Collaborate tool. you'd have to come to these 3 lines, then click on recordings, then find the recording that you're interested in, then click the 3 dots over here, and then click watch now, download, and the students wouldn't have the last 3. They would just see watch now or download. But that's a whole bunch of steps. Instead of creating an area, help and support, calling it recorded live sessions, and literally letting them click on it and going right to the video. So how do I do that as an instructor? So back to the Blackboard Collaborate tool, go to the 3 lines, go to recordings, find the one that you're interested in. So I'll use this one. I'm going to go to the 3 dots. I'm going to copy the link. Now I'm going to go back to where I want to show it to my students. In this case, I'm in help and support. I have a dedicated folder. Remember, build content, content folder. I called it recorded live sessions. I go into that folder, and what do you think this is? What symbol is this? Who can tell me what symbol that is? What's it represent?
Is that the web link icon?
That is. So that tells you what we're going to build, right? Build content, web link. I'm just going to call this a fake session so I can delete it as soon as we're done. I hit Control V, drop that recording link that we copied. And then because I've named it something that is pretty straightforward, I'm going to leave everything else alone. If I needed to add some information, I could here. The other standard, make sure you leave this alone, open in a new window. That way it doesn't, they don't accidentally close their class after they're done watching it. And then simply submit. So now when they click on this, it goes right to the recording. So it's very simple for the students. So if you're going to do live sessions, then I strongly suggest you record them for students that are missing or students that just want to go back and look at a concept again. But 2 things, caption it and then make it easy for the kids to get to. So this isn't one of the assignments that I'm going to be asking for, you know, posting a web link to it. But if you have trouble with it in the future and you want to figure it out again, by all means, reach out to me or any of the liaisons if it drops from your mind. And if you're ever done with something, you can just simply delete it. Okay, that is as far as we're taking the Collaborate Ultra tool. Are there any questions or concerns at this point?
Yes, this is Lisa.
Yes.
I just found like the Collaborate to be like so bulky. This past semester I taught a 3-hour lecture. So one, like getting that amount of content, I had issues for versus my student that was out and just literally needed to hear me talking. It was so much easier just to have another student record it on their iPhone or to use like the old school little tape recorder. So like I guess I'm just asking for those one-offs, you know, when you're not truly teaching virtually, how likely is this to be, you know, super user friendly and helpful for just a long audio recording versus some of like the lower tech options? I'm just curious because I didn't find it to be I found it to be a lot of work when I tried to do it versus literally just having a student record on their iPhone.
Oh, you're preaching to the choir on a lot of work. Just these 4 things that you saw me do. So I sat after class, waited for these things to populate. So that took about a half hour. Then I got just the recorded sessions up there. And this is me breaking it into 2 parts so they're a little bit more manageable file size. But then what you didn't see is me uploading it to YouTube, putting it up there, waiting for it to caption it, waiting for the files that I had another hour easy into just doing this. So I hear you loud and clear on the amount of time, extra effort. So here's the deal. There's nothing that says you have to record a live session. But if you do, then these two things that I mentioned, captioning it and then making it easy for the kids to find, is important. Now, if you're doing other things that are allowing the recording of some way, you are still on the hook for ADA compliance. So if you did a simple tape recorded session, write a transcript. So if you're going to provide that to the whole class, then you're on the hook for ADA compliance. If somebody is doing it on their phone, I think it's the same deal. Am I completely oblivious that people aren't always doing that? No, and I'm probably guilty of it myself sometimes, but to the letter of the law, this is what's supposed to be done. And it just baffles me that the college hasn't jumped all over Blackboard about this, and they have allowed this to go as long as it has. So they're as guilty as the people that may or may not be doing it. But hopefully things change and we switch to a new tool that is intuitive, easier to use, auto captions, and does all the stuff that, my God, this technology has been out for a long time. There's no reason we shouldn't be doing it and making it easy for everybody to do. So, but long answer for a not so easy question. So, all right. Anybody else? Okay. So far we've talked about announcements tool, email tool, discussion board, and collaborate. So y'all don't mind me asking some questions, right? So let's go to, get my paper up here. Let's go to David. David, what is the difference between a forum and a thread?
Forum is the actual group or area where the thread happens in.
Okay, then what does that make a thread?
The thread is the conversation part of it.
Okay, awesome. So the forum is the large area where the conversations are happening. The threads are the actual responses or the
Yeah.
conversations of the students. Absolutely. Okay. Oh, I know what we did not talk about, and we should talk about, and I'm going to do it in our live class here. So I remember a conversation that we talked about last week about using the email tool and whether or not to use it. And we stumbled on the conversation of course messages. So let me quickly show you what those are, and I'll leave it up to you whether or not you have interest in using them going forward. I personally do not, but that's just a simple opinion. So it is a course tool. So I go to plus button, tool link. I'm going to call it course messages. Select the correct tool, which is course messages. I'm going to make it available to the users, which if you're in our live class, you could actually refresh your screen using this little refresh button, and you will see this course messages now in our 197 course. If I click on it, I have create message, create folder, an inbox, and a sent folder. So you all would see this as well. So if I wanted to create a message, I would click on create message, click to. Let's say I'm going to send Lind, and let's say David and Brittany. It's just like instant messages. So I selected who I wanted. I could carbon copy, blind carbon copy, subject line, just like an email, topic. I could upload an attachment. I could use the big giant plus button and do all kinds of different things with it. And then submit it. So now, if, who did I send? Lynn, Brittany, and David. If you're in the live class, you could click on course messages and you could see in your inbox that you would have one unread until you clicked on it. Okay. So what's the limitations with this? This is strictly internal to Blackboard. You are not going to get an email update. There's my cat. An email update that you have something new. And that was the problem with this, is the kids were seeing it on the Blackboard app as being something, thinking that they were sending you an email, but they were sending it as a course message, and it wasn't getting to me as the teacher. So I don't have a lot of use for this tool. It's completely up to you whether you want to use it or not. If you put your push notifications on your phone and on the app to update you for this, it will. But otherwise, you would have to come to the course messages and look in your inbox to see if you had anything. Otherwise, you're not going to know you had something. So that's course messages. So the main difference between course messages and email is course messages is strictly internal, while email is external to Blackboard. Okay. Kim, name 2 places that I could create an announcement. I'll go to my test course.
Let me go to my notes here. So let's see here. Email announcement.
Where's that at? You want to do a curbside shout out?
Decipher my notes here. Oh wait, course tools, send email.
Okay, so we could do.
Go to the plus symbol.
Well, I was asking for an announcement though.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And
Control panel, course tools, and then send email.
Again, I'm not trying to send an email. I'm trying to put out an
Oh,
announcement.
announcement. I'm so sorry.
Where in the course menu do you think you would do one?
I have.
It's a good place to create an announcement.
Go to the plus button file, or hold on a sec.
Don't overthink this one.
My
Look
notes,
straight up here.
I can't decipher my notes. I give up.
Just look up here. Look in this area.
Announcements.
Easy as that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then create an announcement.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What's the other place? Who can give me that other place? Somebody raise their hand.
It's me, Jennifer. I believe it was when we went to the tools and then the quickly, and we went on that little wrench and pencil, and then we could post an announcement to multiple courses.
Yep, right here. So then I get to pick which courses I want to put it out to, and then boom, it's out. Awesome. Okay. Let's go to Joanne. Joanne, give me 3 places that I could send an email. Actually, just give me one where I could send an email from in Blackboard. So not over here at my Gmail, in Blackboard. You with us, Joanne? Ooh, yep. Joanne, you got to put your mic on, which is down here in the bottom Center. Okay, we don't have Joanne. Let's go to Megan. Megan, give me one place that I could send an email from within Blackboard.
You can go to the course tools and send email.
Okay, course tools, send email. Lisa, can you give me another?
Yep, you can go to Grade Center.
Okay, let me collapse this. Grade Center.
And then you could like click on that student's name there, that drop
Okay.
down, yep, email user.
Okay. You could also come here. You have an email button in the Grade Center. I didn't show that one earlier, but I don't know. I'd rather just, I'm looking at somebody anyway, so I'm going to click the down arrow next to them, but you could do it here as well. Somebody else raise their hand? Jennifer?
Me, Aldora.
Eldora, you raised your hand?
Yes. So we
Where
go
else?
to users and groups, like we need like to scroll down. Users and groups, and then we click users.
Okay.
So we can send an email.
You can click on that as long as you got it tied to the right email tool. So, like I said before, I don't use Outlook, but I would imagine once I created that and logged into it properly, it would connect. But anywhere else? Anybody?
Through the Quickly?
Yep. Quickly Course Tools does it as well. There's the email. And we can send it to multiple sections. So, all right. What is the main reason? Yes. Somebody raise their hand.
Me,
Jennifer,
I
you
have a
raised, or
question.
Eldora?
These
What's
are
up?
ways for instructors how we can send emails to the students. But what is the easiest way that we can teach to the students so they can send us an email in case, let's say, they don't know how to use the Gmail account, how they can send an email from the Blackboard to the instructor?
Well, if they're doing it from a computer or
Yeah.
a Chromebook or something like that, then when they are in the course, the email tool that you have, contact the instructor. And remember, you can rename this. I can click the down arrow and rename it. Something as simple as that. Hit the little green check mark. I can't make it any clearer than that. Email your teacher. And as long as they're not doing it on their phone and getting it mixed up, and doing it on a computer, or on a laptop, or a Chromebook or tablet, it's going to work just fine. And it'll go boom, right there and emailing them.
Thank you.
Okay. Otherwise, instruct them to just, they've all got their own email tools on their phones and different things like that. Just make sure you point it out in your syllabus what your email is, and go that route as well. So whatever is easiest for the students. Let's go to Jennifer. What's the advantage on creating an announcement over an email? If I want to communicate out something to my class, a single class, what is the advantage of creating an announcement versus creating an email? Do we have Jennifer?
Yes, I'm here. So when you click on the announcement, that will stay up, so they can always go to Blackboard and see the announcement in case they don't check their email that much, which is often the case.
Okay, well, if they're not in Blackboard and not checking Blackboard, which, oh, never happens with our students, they're religiously checking it every day. What says they even see the announcement? So what's the advantage?
Well, they get the alert in their email if you click that
Ah,
option.
yeah, you get both, right? You
Yes.
get the announcement, plus
That's how
you get
I
the
always.
copy.
Hmm.
So this is a 2-for-1 instead of just buying the one with the email. So absolutely. Somebody had a question? Lynn, you had a question?
No, I'm sorry. Can you put my hand down? Sorry about that.
You can, if you're trying to lower your hand, all you have to do is click on your hand again and it drops it. So
Great,
awesome.
thanks.
Yep. Okay, so that is where we're at for right now. We got about a half hour before the break. So I'd like to start jumping into dynamic assignments. Okay, so what is a dynamic assignment? A dynamic assignment is something that, an assignment obviously, that you create in Blackboard that allows your students to submit something to you. So an example of this would be a simple, straightforward communication class where they're submitting a paper to the teacher. Or even in a technical class like mine, even in a full-blown lab course, my students still had to submit reports based on their assignments. So in my live classes that I just taught, this is 100% lab. There is no lecture in this class. But within my learning modules, these were boards that they had to wire up, test, and then demonstrate competency. So there were self-guiding PowerPoints to show them about the components. They had tests associated with those boards. And then they also had a sequence of operation essay that they had to write and submit to me in Blackboard. So this is a 100% lab class that is still fully functional with Blackboard. So this actually, once they got past the initial shell shock of having to use Blackboard, they realized it was much easier than sitting down and writing things on pen and paper than just to submit things to me. And taking these tests, I simplified them to multiple choice, true, false, short answer, to where they could do them right on their phones. So I made it as straightforward and user friendly as I could for them. And then for me, grading them was a blessing. It was just a massive move forward for me to do this instead of sitting there grading papers. And I also went so far as adding rubrics to these things to where I moved through a structured rubric to take bias out of grading assignments. So even in a 100% lab class, you can still use Blackboard. So let's look at what one is. We're going to go into just this weekly lesson content area that we did. Let's just randomly pick week 2 folder. There's nothing in it. And this isn't a type of content, this is a type of assessment. So we're going to go under assessments. We're going to go under assignment. And let's call this Chapter 2 Reflection. So maybe they had to read Chapter 2 and write a reflection on it, something simple, whatever the assignment is. At the end of the day, this is something they have to submit to you. Obviously, put some instructions in there. Obviously, slightly more interesting than that. You could add files to it, maybe examples of a good versus a bad. If it was a pretty major assignment, you could add different things in here. Maybe this was a dynamic assignment based on a short video. You ask them to watch the video which would be embedded right in the assignment, and then write a reflection on it, or whatever you want them to do, and tie it to that. Or maybe it's a picture that's in there. Maybe it's a photography class and you were trying to evaluate the lighting and the types of backgrounds or whatever it is. I always found it funny. One of my friends before he passed was a photography teacher here at MATC, and it's just absolutely amazing how much technical knowledge they have to do that. And they had a high attrition rate because the students always thought, oh, I'm going to come in and all I got to do is take pictures and I get to pass this class. And we always found it kind of funny, but yeah, there's a lot to it. So he would use pictures, obviously, photography class, but to try to get the students to understand all the technical concepts that were going on within imagery. So, and there's tons of things that could be used for in any type of science classes, medical classes, all kinds of different things. So don't really limit this to just, again, just like discussion boards, it doesn't have to be just simple written instructions. It could be very imaginative and go into the world of video and imagery and be really interesting assignments. So, so you're limited only to your imagination with this big text editor and creating things. Throw a due date on it. Same basic setup. Always remember though, the time, midnight is the start of the day, whereas end of the day is 11:59 p.m. So don't type in there 12 and think that it's the end of the day. It's not. Midnight the start of the day. Points possible, type in the amount of points that you want. The rubric, we're not going to do here. I'm going to demonstrate rubrics when we do the career essentials after the break. All of these are going to be covered in either intermediate or advanced Blackboard, but just quickly make sure that I'm not missing anything. We're not going to cover that. The number of attempts you could change to multiple, unlimited. If you say multiple, you have to say how many. Okay, I'm just going to keep this as a single attempt. There is something called a plagiarism tool called Safe Assign. If you want to check your student submissions against a plagiarism tool, you would check that box. If you are going to check this box, you need to allow your students to see that Safe Assign originality report. So when you get in more into this in intermediate Blackboard, but when you do a Safe Assign, the student submits something, it gets compared to a giant database, and then Safe Assign, the tool, creates an originality report and shows them where potential plagiarism happened. We'll give them links to show them exactly where its comparison is. And yeah, it's kind of a cool tool for not only the student, but the instructor as well. One thing that I want all instructors to realize is this is not simply a punitive tool. This is an educational tool. So that's why I am 100% for allowing the students to see this. You got to remember, our students are at a very beginner level, collegiate level, where they're really starting to wrap their heads around concepts such as plagiarism and originality and citations and all that stuff. So we need to guide them and help them understand that. And by allowing them to see this stuff, then that helps them learn from it. It spans across that, expands across cultures as well. There are certain cultures out there that look at plagiarism from a standpoint of paying respect to the person that did it. And then you can go so far as to really mess with some people's minds that you can self-plagiarize, and that can just blow their minds. And on that note, If you have multiple attempts, you need to check this last box that says exclude submissions from institutional global references databases. So if they had multiple attempts and they put their first one in, it's going to dump it into that database. So the next one they come in, they're going to be almost 100% plagiarized because it's probably going to be very near the same as the first version. So if they're doing multiple attempts, you have to take that second choice. Otherwise, you're going to negate the purpose of doing the safe assign because it's going to see the first one and compare it against it. Grading options, that is advanced Blackboard, display of grades. The only thing I'll talk about here is you can either do it as a score. The only other one that I want to talk about is a percentage. Score, straightforward number, percentage, obviously a percentile. The other stuff gets talked about in intermediate and advanced. The rest, leave them. You do want it in the grade center calculations. You do want to show it to the students. And this third choice is, it is debatable. From my standpoint, showing average and median statistics to students, this is basically the classic bell curve. Do you want to show how well or poorly a student is doing in a class in relationship to their peers? It doesn't name names, it's completely anonymous. However, they're going to see if I was doing poorly in relationship to the rest of the students. And my opinion on this is it could be inhibitive to student retention. What do I mean by that? If I've got one or two students that are doing really bad in the class to start off with, and then they see the rest of the class is doing very good, that's not a lot of incentive for a person that may or may not have the maturity to understand what to do in that situation. It may be a very defeatist position and they decide to drop from the class or walk away from it. Whereas more advanced students might see that as a spur to action and really get them going. Oh, I'm doing pretty crappy compared to everybody else. I better start trying harder. I don't know that our students typically have that maturity level, and I don't mean that, negatively. It's just from what I've seen over the 15 years of teaching here, it's probably a majority. So I do not show that. I would rather approach it my own way and deal with those students individually and try to find a way to move them forward. Make the assignment available. If you did want to put limitations on it, I would prefer that you open and close the folder that this is in versus opening and closing individual things. So we would submit this. So now we have a chapter 2 reflection. So as a student, go in, weekly lessons, it was in week 2. I come to the chapter 2 reflection, and it's telling me about when the due date is, the points possible, the instructions. Because it's tied to safe assign, it's telling the students what's going to happen. When you do this, tell your students explicitly what you want them to do. You really, really, really want them to attach a file. And I literally demonstrate this in front of my students. They'll still mess it up, but I demonstrate it. I have that little short PowerPoint on how to submit an assignment, and I put that in my own classes, not only this one, but my regular students. Because if they write a submission, you don't get to use the inline grading tools. It will put it through Safe Assign, but if you have them attach a file, then you get to use some grading tools that allow call outs and different things that go along with things. And if they stick it in the comments, that really sucks, because you saw where we had the feedback to the learner when we talked about the discussion board grading. Their whole submission would be in that tiny little box, and That does not submit through SafeAssign. That does not allow you to tools for grading, and it really sucks to read a tiny little box on the side. So, all right, so let's put something in there. What I got? I don't know what I got. Downloads, dissertation. I'll just throw one of my dissertation drafts in there. That way we see the originality report. The students can comment in here. And then they would submit it. So it might take a little while for the SafeAssign report to populate. It was a pretty decent sized file that I put in there, but they'll get to see the actual file put in here. They'll get to see the SafeAssign report once it populates. Right now it's in progress. Once it populates, when they click on here, there would be a file, a link to click on here, which I'll show a little later once it populates. Their original file they can download and pull off, and then they see any of the comments that they sent to the teacher. So I'm going to exit the preview. I'm going to keep this preview user. I'm going to continue. And now we're going to go in as a teacher and take a look at what we see for that assignment. So again, because it was created, anytime you create a dynamic assignment, it automatically creates a column in the Grade Center. And because we just did it, it's at the tail end of the Grade Center. It's the last one. And notice we now have an exclamation point. So this means that it needs grading. So I'm going to click the down arrow, and notice we don't have the grade, the activity. Now we have an attempt, and that's what you need to click on, the attempt. So that will bring up their document. And this is one of those things where I said the course menu, being able to collapse it, will help you when you're grading. And if it gets really hard to see, you can even collapse this right side and bring the whole thing up. You can uncollapse it right here. You can see the report is still in progress. So nothing there. We'll come back to that a little later. But the nice thing about this, move this up a little bit, is I can highlight things when they do a submission. And then I can click on the little callouts here. And this is why collapsing the right side can help sometimes as well. And you can type in comments. And I find this incredibly handy, especially when I'm going through all my sequence of operation reports. I just highlight things, do a bunch of call outs. The tool is a little bit more advanced than this, and this gets covered in intermediate Blackboard, but I like to at least point out this function, because even if you don't take intermediate Blackboard, you're still going to need the grade papers. So you can do highlighting, strike throughs, underlining, squiggly underlining. I'm not sure why that. Or the comments is what I really use, because not only does it highlight it, it puts a comment on there. Don't forget though, if I would have come out of this right now, neither one of these comments are saved. So you have to hit save on the comments for them to work. Yes.
Donnie, could you please just review that one more time? I know you did it twice, but so you want to highlight the text, and then you want to that will pull up the little bar, and you use the button on the far left.
Yep.
Okay.
So right here, I got called out on, I just got my dissertation back from the graduate department, and apparently I'm not allowed to put keywords in my abstract, even though one of my committee members told me to put it in there. Love dissertation level shit. So I highlight this as the graduate department, and I say keywords are not permitted in the abstract. And then I simply click save, and it's now a comment in there. I like this because it's fast, it's simple. You highlight something, you click the call out button, type your stuff in, hit save, and then you just move through the whole document. Nice and simple. So works well.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep. And then once you're done with everything, got all your comments in there, you can simply put the points in if you want. So if I'm doing individualized comments to certain areas, I'm going to use the call out feature in the paper. Sometimes I've got some assignments that are just like a quick paragraph or something. Then I might just type my feedback on the right side. Or if there was nothing to correct, then I'll type whatever feedback I need to, like you've seen in your submissions in this class. So if you submitted something to me and it was all correct, I simply typed in all submissions are correct, thank you. Because everybody's doing screenshots in here, I don't typically do this. I'll make my comments and then I'll use demonstrative screenshots of my own and drop them in here to try to help give constructive feedback. Over here, feedback to the learner, only the learner sees, nobody else does. Under here, you see add notes. If I click on that, these are called grading notes. These are private only to you, the instructor. Where this may be handy is if you have an assignment that has multiple submissions. You may want to put some comments in here for yourself to remind you what you told the student to do or whatever. I've myself have never used them, but that doesn't make it wrong, right or wrong. It's just another tool that you can use. Okay. And then at the very end, you can see the comments from the student. You can see the original document, be able to download it if you want, and then simply hit submit at the end. So what does that look like for the student? Well, let's go into student preview mode. Bring the menu back. Gonna go to weekly lessons, week 2. Actually, no, sorry. Great, my grades. Here's the call out. If I just wanted to look at the call out. Oh, wait, sorry. That's getting ahead of myself. Here's the assignment. You're not going to see call outs here. You have to go into the actual assignment and then they get to see everything. So when they get further, they get to see all your comments and call outs. If there were any feedback, I didn't put any in, but if there would have been any feedback, it would have been in here. Okay, our safe assign report did come back, and this is one reason to never judge a paper strictly on the percentage of insinuated plagiarism. So this literally was a version of my dissertation, which I promise you I did not plagiarize a single thing. I had very, very few direct quotes in my dissertation. So let's look at the originality report. I don't like the new one. I still like the old one, so I like coming over here. It's a horse apiece of which one you look at it, but it shows you each thing that they say that you plagiarized. Well, of course I plagiarized this. I can't not make up my own title, and some of the common things that you're going to see. Well, of course I plagiarized American Psychological Association 7th edition. And I think I might have added mine to the reference to the database. But what you're going to see, let me go way down to the reference list. Every stinking reference is tagged as plagiarized. Of course it is. I have the exact titles of the journal articles or books or whatever they are. So of course it comes like plagiarized. And this with the dissertation where I've got freaking 25, 30 pages of references, yeah, it took up a big chunk. So don't judge a book by its cover, literally. Go in and look at it. But the nice thing about this is I can click on this and it can show me where they think they saw it. So it's saying another student's paper. I can actually go to that. Well, duh, it's my paper. So it really takes you to a lot of spots where you can dig to see if it's truly plagiarism or not. So recommendations for future research. Well, how do you not say that? It's saying that I found it here. Well, I promise you I did not find it here. So, oh, it's another dissertation. Of course, they have the same thing in there. Every dissertation is going to have that. So, but it allows you to look through things and see where potential plagiarism is. So, use the originality report simply as a tool to help figure out what went on, and then it's your own personal position how you approach it. I did have a student a few semesters ago that was plagiarizing constantly in discussion board posts, and it was just so obvious that I didn't need Safe Assign. But you dig down far enough, and I found out it was a language culture barrier. Worked with him in different ways to try to get him to understand and move it forward. Eventually, we got away from it and it was fine. But don't just simply jump to conclusions. There can be circumstances behind it for why things are happening. So, all right. I'm going to exit the preview. I'm going to keep it. So for your assignment for this one, you are going to go back and forth, back and forth. Make sure you keep that, because if you delete it and you submitted stuff, you're going to have to do it all over again. So make sure you keep keeping the preview user and all the data. All right. Any questions about dynamic assignments and the basics of Safe Assign?
Are we gonna go over how to have like the assignments, how you have the knowledge checks that we did where you're not attaching anything? It simply is doing it within that individual shell.
You're talking tests?
Yeah, like how we did the knowledge checks for last
Those are
week.
tests. Those are tests. Tests are covered in intermediate Blackboard. If you wanted to, at the end, I'm going to discuss something called. Well, I'll talk about it right now, seeing as it's a good topic. Let me come back over to our live class. So I'm not going to talk about all the assignments, but I'm going to talk about one of them right now. So one of the assignments for the remainder of this course is called a research topic. So from the self-paced learning modules, research one topic and write at least 2 full paragraphs about the topic you choose. Be sure to respond to 2 other different people in the class, thoughtfully, obviously. Don't say, oh, good job, Lynn. I'm looking for a little bit more than that. Add to the conversation. So if somebody talked about tests, for instance, and you talked about how to create a test, somebody may come behind you and say, hey, did you know that you can export and import a test to another course? And then you could add to the conversation that way. So that's the type of thing that I'm looking for. So on that note, for researching a topic, you could go here to the institution page, come down to where? Faculty support website. I could come down to, let's see if there's something that we could use. Oh, look at here. We got a giant area of tests. And this is why it's in a whole nother class, because there's a lot to talk about. But if you really wanted to learn about creating a simple test, you could look at this one tutorial, be able to work your way around it, because it's only 2 pages. There's a lot in these 2 pages, don't get me wrong, but it would walk you through creating a test. But then you also need to deploy it. So there's a few different things to this. And actually this one is just creating a test. This is not even deploying it. So you'd have to go a little bit further than this. You'd have to do this one plus this one, making a test available to students. And this might help you too, noting. So you could do a little bit of research just on tests, looking at 3 different things right here, and have that be your research topic, which is in a discussion board. You're going to put it on the discussion board in a forum that I've created so everybody can see it. That would be how you may want to approach that. Obviously, we would love to see you take the intermediate Blackboard and get further, but this could be your jumping off point. And then obviously I'm going to comment in the discussion board and add to the conversation. Also, you're more than welcome to meet with me virtually this week to go over it. I'd be more than happy to meet with you and go over stuff outside of obviously our synchronous session. Okay? Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Any questions about the dynamic assignment? Okay, so I want to take a break here, so I'm going to stop presenting. I'm going to stop the recording.